Well, Charles, how's Vermont?
I told you I'm in Wyoming.
Oh, yeah. How's that?
Well, I'm on this campaign. I'm now definitely in senior status, so I've got to think about how to avoid these very long winters in the East Coast. And an obvious place to go is somewhere that's even colder, Wyoming. No, um, an obvious place to go is out in Asia at a place that I'm not going to disclose until I leave it. But I thought it would be good to connect in to HQ. And obviously, we've got an historic thing to talk about in the First Amendment forum because there's no freedom of speech anymore in the United States,
Yeah.
even after Musk took control of Twitter, or in theory, pretends to take control of Twitter.
Right.
So, so before we get into it too much, I mean, this poor art department, they're working nonstop and they don't really get the kind of credit they deserve. And here's this super poster. I wouldn't have remembered to change we had Biden before in that post. I think that I saw a mock up the art department did, and that was F instead of. And then you change it to Trump, but obviously you put T.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Thank you. And this was actually one of the worst Superman movies ever, but he returned in the movie, so I felt it was an appropriate choice for Trump after that speech last night, which I have some mixed feelings here, Charles, about Trump 2024. I obviously voted for Trump 2020. I wanted Trump 2020. And I've told you this before. I feel very much about Trump as I do about my second wife. And by that, I mean, if she knocked on the door right now, I'd probably end the show and have a conversation with her. And when you come back, she might still be here. But I don't think it's a good idea. And I've been down the road of dating exes before. And there's so many things that don't work out. And when Trump said last night, he was talking about draining the swamp, I was like, I've heard that before. But he did say something that intrigued me, that I had confidence he was being honest about. Election reform. I
Yeah.
think I may vote for Trump 2024 for that reason alone.
Right. Well, yeah, I was unable to tune in live, and so far I've only been able to catch excerpts. And one thing I noticed, other people apparently have noticed, he was remarkably restrained. I would argue even downbeat when he read off the speech.
Yeah, I
But then,
agree.
and then though, when he got to certain places, he just went off script, and he was hilarious. I'm
Yeah,
sure I can just imagine trying to control a Donald Trump. It's virtually impossible, especially at his age. I mean, they say
yeah.
you cannot, once somebody turns 40, they're unteachable. This is what I've been told. Maybe just because I'm unteachable, but from birth. But I can imagine the moments that they said, all right, listen, Mr. President, we've got to get you, we got to rehearse this thing because it's important. We don't want you to make mistakes here. And I could just imagine some ninny sitting there going, "Now, don't bring up 2020. Don't play in to the National Review and others who are going to diss you for bringing up the questioning the election. Don't be an election denier." And so he said, "Okay. Now the reason I'm running is I've already won twice." I thought that was
Well,
hilarious.
and of course, we've got to be careful. We're quoting the president, the former president, but who knows what YouTube is going to decide is verboten. It's important for people to know that today's show will be taking place in the First Amendment Forum, and people can join us there on subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth, patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. And now, Charles, new this week, people can join on odyssey.com. When you get to odyssey.com, if you just search for crowdsource the truth, you will find it. It's a little bit of a tricky URL to remember right out of the gate. And we're just having some slow internet performance here at HQ. But people can join us on Subscribestar, Patreon, and Odyssey. Become members, sponsor the show. It's a great way to keep independent journalism going and to keep this show going. What else can we discuss here on YouTube, Charles, without getting knocked off?
Well, I think we could quickly comment about the performance. Remember, the great thing when I was working for the Japanese 30 years ago, and getting lectures about how you Americans don't understand economics or finance or strategy or manners, and you have to be very careful when you go to Japan and all this kind of stuff. And then my president, then your president H.W. Bush hurls Wayne's World hurls on, on either the prime minister or the emperor, I forget which, of Japan. And I immediately went into my Japanese colleagues and I said, see, look, if my president could do this, I can
Yeah.
do no wrong in Japan. I promise you, I'm not going to throw up on anybody.
He
But
set the bar
similarly,
pretty low.
right. And so here we have, Dingbat Man, our president, goes all the way out to Bali, which really is a very long trip from the east coast of America. There's no way, as we see with what's happened apparently to our president, that particularly as you age, um, when you go out to that particular part of the world from the East Coast, your body is just going to rebel against it. And he had to basically fail to attend the most important dinner for all the leaders in the world. And how do you let yourself get into that place? It's ridiculous.
I got a question, Charles. What does it cost? I mean, obviously, I leave here, it's free. Maybe it's $4 in gas if I go somewhere. What does it cost for the President of the United States to travel from Washington, D.C. to Indonesia and the support staff and security that he has there during his duration? I mean, the question I'm getting at is, how much U.S. money did Joe Biden waste by flying all the way to Indonesia to go to sleep?
A tremendous, or worse.
Millions?
I mean, maybe he didn't want to hurl on Xi. Can you imagine the headline? Biden hurls on Xi.
Instead, he just was like a humming, can't read these notes. What are we supposed to talk about? Ah, geez. And then he said something really bad. Like he said, they asked him, what about codifying Roe v. Wade? He was like, yeah, we're not going to be able to do that. Good night, everybody.
I mean, it's almost you need to invent. I mean, Saturday Night Live is gone as far as it was gone decades ago. But you need to invent a format similar to Saturday Night Live and do skits of this. I mean, it's implausible. I mean, to sit, and I've never had the experience of being in a Hollywood meeting where you, or of any kind. Well, no, that's not true. I did go
They're
on and have
funny.
lunch on the lot at 20th Century on a business deal, but in a meeting where you watch the pros at the whatever it is decide, well, we're going to do this thing or we're not going to do that thing, and to try to script the type of election we're going to talk about in the forum and the length of time it's taking in the United States of America, which prides itself on being state of the art, defining the state of the art in high tech, but we can't count votes with our systems, and then have this idiot go to a meeting, as Trump called him out and said, how do you go to a country and congratulate the leader of a country on another continent? It's not like it's an adjacent country to Cambodia. It's a
Yeah.
completely different continent, very far away from Cambodia. How do you get that wrong? Then get on this expensive plane. And my understanding is that when Air Force One travels, there's more than one plane just for security. There may be as many as three. And then I do know, because I remember reading the story, when Bill Clinton made his final trip to China as president, he took 1,500 people with him. And figuring the cost of each person's air traffic, the way they do it, I'm told, is they assume it's a first class air ticket. That's what you get. So I forget if you get billed or whatever. They approximate a first class air ticket. Now, first class air ticket, forget all the different stops that Biden made, but just New York or Washington, D.C. out to Bali is going to be at least $10,000, if not 20, depending on how
Yeah.
you do it,
And
per
the airline
person
and
times
everything.
1,500.
Right.
And honestly, why don't we just wake up maybe in 2025 and say, you know what, America is less than 5% of the world population. As for the rest of the world, we frankly don't care. We're going to control our borders. We've got a lot to fix at home. And there's a lot of international. We don't run China. We don't run India. We don't presume to run Africa. We don't need to defend the Europeans anymore. They have all their ideas. They
Right.
have all their money. They can snub their nose at us. We're going to take 4 years anyway and focus on the United States of America. And I think most Americans, other than people in the State Department and academia and media who like to fly around the world at taxpayer expense, they'd all be fine with that. You know, we really don't need this knucklehead and team of knuckleheads off in Bali.
And to your point there, Charles, Joe Biden, even in the midst of this FTX disaster, which I took note that some Ukrainian officials were tweeting that, oh, this is totally false. Ukraine was not invested in FTX. And it's like, well, right. Whoever claimed that was wrong. They're not invested with it. They're beneficiaries of it by participating in what appears to be some sort of a money laundering scheme. But here Biden is asking for another $37 billion for Ukraine. The United States is crumbling. The economy is a disaster. And this guy wants to send $37 billion to Ukraine. What do you say,
Why not trillion?
Exactly.
Why not trillion?
Or just light it on fire. Why send it to Ukraine?
Well, here in Wyoming, where I am, I went into a big. It's a small state, but near where I am, there's a nice shopping mall, and I went into it, and there was a guy. Uncharacteristically for the United States, there were people standing outside the stores, and one guy came up to me, and I guess he was from another country. He spoke with a heavy accent, and he said, "How would you like to buy something you absolutely do not need?" This is true. What the guy said to me, and I thought, but didn't say to this person. I said, "That's not what you do in business. That's what the government does. We buy stuff you absolutely don't need. We don't need to send. If you want to make a compelling case to help poor people, you don't start with Ukraine. You start in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the formerly called United African Empire, another country, or you could pick off of many different countries in Africa, in East Asia, where there are big populations." And where, for whatever reason, we, the United States, have not to date decided that we wanted to help. But Ukraine, particularly from somebody, what I really hate is when I think carefully about helping somebody, and I do, I don't want to help somebody and figure I've finished. You want to give the amount of money that's needed to provide the assistance. So you give the money, and the next thing you know, this idiot in the tank top is saying, no, you gave me X billion, now I want 2 times X billion.
Right.
Well, I thought I gave you all the money you needed.
Right.
No, I need more now that I see you gave me money. I mean, this is never going to stop.
Exactly. I mean, this is like giving money to some bum on the street, and every day he comes up to you saying, "Where's my money?"
Well, that's what
funny,
government
Charles.
is.
We can't see you on the map of my Wyoming here. You're obviously too small.
Well, I'm traveling undercover.
Of course.
That's in rural Wyoming.
You mean you're not staying at the Devil's Tower trading post?
No, actually, what I do to economize is I sleep like Bob. Why do you think I go to Washington Square Park every day? When I'm around Washington Square, I want to see how those guys do it. So I just go. I've got a few extra garbage bags. People are always throwing out newspapers, and I just wrap myself up in newspaper and curl up under a bush,
like everybody else in the park. Yeah, we can see you. But Charles, we need to break right now because we're going to make the transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment, which is where we're going to have our ability to exercise the First Amendment in the First Amendment Forum. So please join us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And now you can go to odyssey.com, search for Crowdsource the Truth, become a member, and you're going to get the sponsor exclusive content on Odyssey as well. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.